He laughed while his pen carved the last signature, like this was a champagne toast and not the end of a 12-year marriage. The laughter bounced off glass and marble, landed on the woman across from him, and cut deeper than any insult he'd ever thrown. In 3 minutes, his future was protected, her past was packed into a suburban house, and the prenup he worshipped felt like an iron door slamming shut. Or so he thought. The lawyer's office smelled like cedar polish and a victory cigar. Darius Cole reclined in a steel-blue chair, grin at full wattage, the posture of a man who adores mirrors. His signature unfurled across the divorce decree, looped, generous, theatrical. He didn't look up when he said it. "This is easier than I expected." Across from him, Mira Lawson counted her breaths. 12 years balanced on the ridge of a pen. The lights above were bright enough to bleach color out of skin, bright enough to turn the room into an interrogation stage. She focused on the quiet, the steady rustle of paper, the faint hum of the HVAC, the polite cough of a paralegal by the door. "All set," announced Alan Greaves, Darius's attorney, the kind of man who collected cufflinks like souvenirs. "Your turn, Ms. Lawson." Myra's fingertips tingled. She didn't trust her voice, so she nodded. The packet of documents waited, asset schedules, transfer acknowledgments, the kind of paperwork that uses white space like a weapon. The terms were simple, at least the way they'd explained them. She would keep the house in the suburbs, a good school district, clean sidewalks, a yard full of roses she planted, and Darius would keep the businesses, the portfolios, the rentals, the downtown penthouse with the river slicing light across its windows at midnight. "Generous," Darius said, and smiled like a salesman closing in on his favorite close. She signed. Page 1. Page 2. Her name, again and again, became a quiet saw. There were little remarks between Darius and Alan, traded like inside jokes. A chuckle. A whisper. Another chuckle. Mira didn't ask what was funny until it became impossible not to. "What's the joke?" Darius leaned back, both hands behind his head, wedding band already removed, the tan line like a small ghost. "Wondering how Celine will react," he said. "Patient woman. She'll be relieved we can finally live like adults." Celine Hart, his executive assistant who scheduled his calls, curated his calendar, and, for 18 months, rewired his after-hours life. He never knew that Mira knew. Most men like him never do. Mira put the pen down. "She must be extraordinary." "She's focused," he said. "Ambitious. Grateful." His eyes found hers, dared her to flinch. Not everyone understands what it takes to keep success upright. In the corner, Myra's attorney, Ada Okoye, touched her shoulder, a small anchor in a moving sea. "We can reschedule," Ada murmured. "You don't owe anyone speed." Mira replied without looking away from Darius. "We finished today." She signed the last page. The paper made a soft thud when she set it down, the sound a judge's gavel might make if a judge ever whispered. 12 years, she said quietly. "I meant them." Past tense, Darius said, easy and practiced. "Good. Clean cuts heal." She stood, the chair skidding a fraction. When she reached the door, he called her name, light, careless. "Don't forget to have the house cleared by month's end," he said. "Celine and I may use it on weekends. Saves the drive." The handle was cool under her palm. The first version of Mira, the one who still believed this could be salvaged with a dignified silence, walked out. The second version of Mira, the one that had been simmering behind her ribs since the first lie broke cover, walked with her. Out on the sidewalk, the city smelled like rain on hot stone. A bus stopped at the corner, a woman laughed into her phone, a child balanced on a low wall with her father's hand nearby. Mira stood still until the boiling quiet inside her resolved into something with a name. It wasn't grief. Not only. It wasn't rage. Not only. It was my intention. The coffee had gone cold and bitter in a cup that said morning, sunshine in a cheerful font with a crack through the handle. The house held its breath, the hallway photographs, the dent in the sofa cushion where she used to read, the shoes on the mat that no longer pointed toward a shared life. Her phone filled with messages, her sister Tessa checking in, her mother offering soup, Ada promising she was there, truly there, if Mira wanted company. She read them and didn't type back because language felt like a crowded room she wasn't ready to enter. When the doorbell rang, she watched the silhouette through the glass. Ada. A neat braid. A leather briefcase. Eyes that apologized for courage. "I've been thinking," Ada said, laying a legal pad on the dining table they'd once used for double dates and birthday dinners. "About that prenup. About how smug he was." Myra's mouth twitched. "He's always smug." "There are technicalities that matter here," Ada said, flipping pages. "Our state requires strict conditions for enforceability. Mutual counsel. Full financial disclosures. Proper execution. And, this is the one people overlook, timely filing with the court." She tapped the line she'd highlighted 3 times. No filing, no teeth. Mira felt the first true inhale of the week. If it was never filed, it becomes a private agreement with no power in divorce court. Ada met her eyes. "I can investigate. Pull records. It will cost. And there's no promise. But my instinct says he was confident enough to become sloppy." "Do it," Mira said. No wobble in her voice. "Whatever it takes." Ada nodded like a soldier accepting a mission. When she left, the house changed shape. Not bigger, sharper. Edges where there had been blur. The phone buzzed, Darius's name was bright as a hazard light. Mira answered because she wanted to hear how a man sounds when he thinks he's already won. "Timeline check," he said. Laughter in the background. A clink of glassware. "End of the month is fine. But if you can move faster, I'll make it worth your while." "How much is worth to you?" 10,000. Mira looked around the kitchen that still smelled like lemon oil, at the steeping teabag she'd forgotten. "Pocket change," she said, almost to herself. "What?" "I'll be out when the papers say I'm out." "Don't be difficult," he said, that patient with children tone he saved for waiters and wives. "No need for ugly." The call ended with a polite goodbye that felt obscene. Mira set the phone down and let herself cry, no actress's tears, no screen-ready mascara river, just the kind that pulls sound out of your bones. When it passed, something inside had burned away, leaving the steel it had been hiding. She opened her laptop. Searched case law. Bookmarked statutes. Dug into corporate records that wore names like costumes. This property was transferred that year. That LLC formed a week after a fight she remembered word for word. Numbers that told stories. Patterns disguised as spreadsheets. A map emerging beneath the noise, assets shuffled, titles fogged, interests re-registered, years of preparation hiding in plain sight. And yet, no record anywhere, at least nowhere public, of a prenup filing. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hi, it's Celine. Darius gave me your contact. I hope there are no hard feelings. I'd love your input on the house, paint colors, layout, so we can honor its history. A smiling emoji ended the message like a flourish on a ransom note. Mira deleted it. Not to be polite, because her fury deserved the oxygen. Harrison and Associates had brushed steel door handles and carpet that remembered every footstep. But Mira didn't meet Harrison. She met Lionel Carr, who made a called "the man you hire when everybody else misses the obvious." Carr's hair was silver without apology. His office smelled like old books and good decisions. "I've read your file," he said. And his. A thin smile. "Your ex has been industrious." Documents fanned across his desk, wiring details, deed transfers, corporate hierarchies that curled like ivy. "None of this is illegal," Carr said. "But it is intentional. He's built a hedge maze and put your share in the center." Mira didn't blink. "Can we pull the maze up by the roots? If the court decides these entities are alter egos, shells without independent purpose, yes." He slid a sheet forward. "But the fastest lever is the prenup. Our statute is draconian about filing. File late, and it's confetti in court. Do we have proof it wasn't filed?" "Not yet," Carr said. "But I know where to look." He listed sources like a trail guide, clerk's register, off-site archives, electronic logs, internal indices. "I'll also examine the lawyering itself. Greaves's firm has a reputation for speed. Speed makes mistakes." For the first time in days, Mira allowed the corner of her mouth to lift. "My hope can't afford false positives." Carr nodded. "I don't bring hope. I will bring evidence." She left with a next steps list crisp enough to be a flag. In the elevator, she let herself stare at her reflection. She looked like a woman who had been betrayed and then did her homework. That, she decided, was a look she could keep. The days became scaffolding, work emails answered on muscle memory, a shower taken like a contract honored, dinners perfunctory and beige. Evenings were the real hours. Spreadsheets, PDFs, and notes scribbled and taped to cabinet doors. A web of dates and names. The small bleeps of an old scanner chewing through years of joint returns. She found oddities that weren't odd once you recognized the design. A consulting company she built had been licensed under an entity Darius controlled. Her grandmother's inheritance, that stubborn $150,000 that smelled like sweet tea on a porch, had migrated into a corporate account requiring dual signatures. That sounded good on paper. On paper, you can lock any door. In reality, only one person had the key. Ada checked in nightly. So did Tessa, with blunt comfort only sisters can deliver. He is not a tornado. He is a man. Men end. You don't. And then, because narratives are cruel before they are kind, Darius called again. Found a sofa Celine loves, he said. Italian leather. Suits the house. Don't worry, we'll keep your roses. Keep them, Mira said. They have thorns. Always did, he replied, not catching it. He pivoted, too casually. By the way, if you're getting ideas about that prenup, don't. It's iron. Because Alan Greaves says so? Because the law says so, he snapped, then smoothed his voice. Don't waste money on fantasies. When the line went dead, Mira stared at the dark window. In the reflection, she didn't look like someone chasing fantasies. She looked like someone turning a doorknob nobody expected her to touch. It arrived on a Tuesday when the sky couldn't decide between rain and restraint, a cream envelope with her name in careful ink, the weight of expensive paper. A courier demanded her signature, and for the first time in a week, another human looked her in the eye and asked how she was doing. Getting better, she said, and surprised herself by believing it. Inside, one page, Lionel Carr's letterhead, and 3 words underlined twice. We found it. For a breath and another, the world went quiet except for the small, stunned laugh that escaped her throat, the kind of laugh people make falling out of planes and realizing their parachute is real. Voiceover steps back because the present is too bright to stare at directly. For context, you need the method. Lionel's update came with timestamps. 3 separate searches through 3 separate indices. One clerk with 20 years in the filing department who can find a misfiled document like a truffle pig finds treasure. They looked under Greaves's case number, under Darius's full legal name, under alternative spellings and the kind of typos courts specialize in. They checked paper logs from the week the document was allegedly executed and the week after, then cross-checked docket books, then verified against the microfilm that exists to humble the digital age. Nothing. Not there. Not anywhere. Sometimes, nothing is louder than sirens. Lionel's message didn't celebrate. It enumerated the statute, the consequences, the pathway from prenuptial contract to inadmissible decoration. Mira reread it until the letters reorganized into relief. But if the prenup was never filed, another question arose. Why? People like Darius hire people like Greaves precisely to make sure the paperwork stands when the house burns. You don't spend years arranging shells and hedge mazes and then forget to put a roof on your favorite fortification. Unless someone took the roof off on purpose. The name floated up from the cold text she'd deleted. Celine. Ambitious. Focused. Grateful. And studying law at night. Mira opened a new note and wrote it plainly. Who benefits if the prenup is worthless? Answer, Mira, now. And someone who intends to replace her and someday walk away. Sometimes the shortest lines are the ones with the most voltage. Ada came over with takeout and a grin she tried to smother and failed. If this holds, she said between egg rolls, we're not negotiating table scraps. We're counting halves. Halves, Mira repeated, and the word sounded like arithmetic finally doing moral work. But one more move, Ada said. Lionel wants a deeper financial autopsy. If we can show intent to conceal, we're not just dividing, we're asking the court to correct a heist. They mapped it across the dining table, paces and plays in neat lines. Mira felt alive in a way that wasn't manic or vengeful. It was cleaner. Closer to a spine remembering itself. Her phone lit again. Unknown number, but she knew who it was before she opened it. The message was shorter this time, as if the typist had moved from velvet gloves to surgical ones. This is Celine. I'd still love to talk house. Coffee tomorrow? Mira stared at the text for a long minute, then typed back a single word, yes. A second message arrived with a location 2 blocks from the courthouse and a time that assumed compliance. 2 p.m. Don't go alone, Ada said automatically. I won't, Mira answered, and it wasn't bravado. It was a strategy. Some conversations deserve witnesses. The house felt different with a plan living under its roof. Mira walked the rooms slowly, the way you walk a garden at dusk. She paused at the doorway to the room that would have been a nursery if life had followed easier paths. She let the ache sit with her, not as punishment but as truth. Then she moved on. She folded clothes into boxes, not because a deadline ordered it, but because action feels like agency. She kept what would be useful in the next version of her life, the Dutch oven scrapes that told recipes by scent, the black dress that could argue its way into any room, the box of letters Tessa wrote freshman year. She set aside what belonged to the past, the his and hers wine glasses with etched initials, the self-help book Darius had gifted her with a note about optimizing mornings, framed accolades from charity galas where she'd learned how to vanish in high heels. Near midnight, a storm finally chose to be a storm. Rain hit the roof like applause. Mira lay awake and let the weather do its work. In the morning, she'd sit across from the woman who'd rearranged the architecture of her life with a smile and a calendar invite. She wouldn't take a sword. She'd take a mirror. If you're feeling this turning point, when a quiet plan becomes a living thing, tap like so the algorithm knows women taking back power deserve screen time. And in the comments, tell us what sign you'd look for if someone in your life was moving money like smoke. Share it, someone will read it and recognize a pattern in time. 2 p.m. The cafe buzzed with silverware and mid-afternoon ambition. Mira chose a corner table with a clear line to the door. She wasn't early. She was ready. Celine arrived in the navy, the kind of shade that photographs as authority. Her hair was immaculate, her watch was the price of a used car, her smile was calibrated for welcome without warmth. Mira, she said, as if names taste better when spoken gently. Thank you for meeting. Voiceover will not replicate every word. That moment belongs to part 2. But the air in that cafe thinned around sentences that meant more than they said. There were mentions of the house and the transition, and an apology polished for display. There were phrases like I understand how difficult this is and we just want to honor what you built, and too many uses of we for a conversation between two women. At a certain point, Celine's eyes brightened the special way they do when a person starts talking about the subject they brought themselves to discuss. Topics shifted from furniture to frameworks, from color palettes to contracts. Prenups can be so reassuring, she said, watching Myra's face like a therapist or a hunter. Filed correctly, they keep everyone safe. Filed correctly. The words sat on the table like a glass you can't quite see until the light hits it. Mira smiled, a small, patient thing. I suppose they can, she said. If they're filed. Celine's smile didn't move, but something behind it did. And somewhere, not in that room but close enough to count, preparation waited in a van with headphones and an evidence bag, and Lionel's voice memo showed as unread, and Ada's last message said, "Text me when it's done." Because plans that save you are never singular. They're braided. By the time the coffee went cold, the conversation had become a map with a single red dot. Celine's confidence, Darius's arrogance, a missing filing, and a system that pretends to be neutral, all of it narrowed to a moment when a sentence might turn into proof. Mira left the cafe with rain on her coat and a heartbeat she could count like a drumline. Back at home, the cream envelope lay open on the table, Lionel's 3 words staring up like a door kicked off its hinges. Rain swept across the courthouse steps that morning, and inside, justice prepared itself for a reckoning. Somewhere between arrogance and oversight, Darius Cole had left a thread dangling, and Mira Lawson was ready to pull. 3 words had rewritten the script. We found it. The prenup that wasn't filed. The armor that wasn't real. And soon, everyone, Darius, Celine, and even his lawyer, would learn what happens when you laugh too early at the wrong woman. Before we dive back in, remember to subscribe if you're watching. Stories like this are built from real lessons and real emotions. Comment where you're watching from, and tell us, have you ever seen arrogance turn into its own punishment? The air in Lionel Carr's office crackled like static. Papers covered his desk in neat stacks marked with colored tabs. Beside him sat Ada Okoye, the lawyer who'd started this fight. Mira took her seat, heart steady but eyes alert. Carr adjusted his glasses. We've searched the courthouse systems, digital, archived, microfilm. There's no record, not even a misfiled one. That prenup of his was never registered. Mira blinked, trying to absorb it. You're saying, legally, it doesn't exist? Exactly, Carr replied. For divorce purposes, it's a ghost. The court will divide assets by statute, not by that paper he thought could bury you. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Then she laughed, not in triumph, but disbelief. A small, stunned sound that grew into something fierce. All that confidence, she murmured. All that smirking over nothing. Ada smiled faintly. Men like Darius always think paperwork bends to their will. But it bends only to precision. Carr leaned forward. We're not done. We'll need evidence of intent, proof of hidden assets, shell companies, fraudulent transfers. If we can trace those, the court won't just void the prenup. It'll penalize him for deceit. How long do we have? 6 weeks, Carr said. That's when the final hearing's set. 6 weeks to uncover everything. 6 weeks to turn quiet fury into a strategy that could rewrite a fortune. Mira lived those weeks in 2 worlds. By day, she moved through the motions of her job at the marketing firm, emails, campaigns, polite nods to colleagues who whispered sympathy. By night, she became her own private investigator. She cross-referenced bank statements with property records, scanned investment filings, and traced signatures that didn't match. She found shell corporations owned by other shell corporations, each linked by one name in fine print, Darius Cole. The man had turned deceit into architecture. But every structure has a weak beam. And arrogance makes men sloppy. One LLC, Williams Investment Group, listed Mira Lawson as its president. She'd never even heard of it. Her grandmother's inheritance, $150,000 meant for security, had been routed through that company and used for business expansion. Only Darius had access to its funds. He hadn't protected himself. He'd incriminated himself. The phone rang late one evening. The number, Darius's, flashed across the screen. Mira let it buzz once, twice, 3 times before answering. "I hope you're making progress packing," he said. There was laughter behind him again, restaurant chatter, clinking glasses, a woman's voice too close to the receiver. "I have until the end of the month," she said evenly. Right. But Celine's been dreaming about that house. The backyard, the kitchen, you understand. We'd like to start renovations early." "Renovations," she repeated, her voice soft as ice. "To the home I designed." He sighed, a sound rehearsed to imply reasonableness. "Don't be difficult, Mira. Let's keep this civil." She didn't raise her voice. "You cheated on me, stole my money, and now you're redecorating my life. Tell me, what's left to keep civil?" He paused. "Celine's not my mistress anymore. She's my fiancée." Mira froze. That was fast. "When you know," he said, a smile audible through the line. "Some people are just better suited." She didn't hang up immediately. She let the silence sit, cold and full. Then she spoke, her tone calm enough to unsettle. "Then I hope you're both ready. Because you have no idea what's coming." And she ended the call. Hours later, she sat in bed, laptop open, connecting one thread after another. Darius hadn't just planned a divorce, he'd engineered a financial heist. Years of preparation, layers of deceit, investments shifted out of reach. But Mira understood his flaw now. He always underestimated what he couldn't control. She stared at Celine's photo on the company website, executive assistant, law student, perfect posture. Then she noticed something else. The bio mentioned her part-time enrollment in a family law program. Family law. Myra's stomach turned. Celine had been studying the rules while helping Darius draft the prenup. And if she'd been the one handling the filing, that meant she knew exactly what she was, or wasn't, doing. A week later, Carr called. "I've dug deeper into Greaves's history. He's had multiple clients with unfiled prenups over the past 5 years. Either incompetence, or deliberate negligence." "Deliberate," Mira said flatly. Celine handled the filing. Carr raised an eyebrow. "You're certain?" "I'm going to make her say it," she said. And she meant it. Carr introduced Detective Sarah Martinez, a calm, sharp-eyed woman from the Financial Crimes Unit. "Mrs. Lawson," Martinez said, "we've been tracking Celine for a while. 2 past marriages under different names. Both ended with invalid prenups and half the assets transferred to her." Mira sat back, absorbing the words. "She's done this before." "At least twice," Martinez confirmed. "Possibly more. We think she targets wealthy men, sabotages the prenup filing, then walks away rich after divorce." "And Darius?" "Unwitting accomplice," the detective said. "But guilty in his own right. Fraud is fraud." Myra's pulse steadied. "So, what now?" Martinez folded her hands. "We need proof, an admission. If you're willing, we'd like you to meet with Celine. Wear a wire. Get her to confirm she managed the filing herself. Mira stared at her. You want me to bait her? Think of it as giving her the rope she's already weaving, Martinez said quietly. You'd be protecting the next woman she targets. Mira hesitated for only a breath. I'll do it. 2 days later, Mira sat in a surveillance van parked near a small downtown cafe. The air smelled of coffee grounds and rain. Detective Martinez adjusted the microphone pinned beneath her blouse. Remember, Martinez said, let her talk. These types love to brag. Mira nodded, checked her reflection in the side mirror. She didn't look like bait. She looked like resolve. At 2 p.m. sharp, she entered the cafe. Celine was already there, radiant in navy blue, every strand of hair obedient. She smiled as if she were greeting an acquaintance at brunch. Mira, she said, voice light, confident. This is a surprise. Mira sat opposite her. Thank you for meeting. I just wanted to talk woman to woman. About closure. Celine tilted her head, curiosity in her eyes. Closure? Yes. Darius is happy, I suppose. You two seem aligned. Celine smiled. We are. He needed someone who understood him. His ambitions. His potential. Mira stirred her coffee, letting silence pull the thread. I'm sure it helped that you're studying law. Celine's eyes flickered, pleased by the recognition. It did. I was able to advise him, actually, about asset protection, prenups, and legal timing. He appreciated my perspective. Of course, Mira said evenly. You helped him with the prenup? I coordinated everything, Celine replied, a hint of pride in her tone. Darius was drowning in work. I made sure it was signed, witnessed, and filed correctly. Filed correctly? Mira echoed softly. Celine nodded. Exactly the way it needed to be handled. Mira smiled, her pulse steady, the wire beneath her blouse capturing every syllable. That must have been a relief. It was. For both of us. One missed deadline and the entire document would have been worthless. Celine laughed lightly, unaware her words were sealing her fate. Worthless, Mira repeated. Yes. That would have been tragic. They parted with pleasantries, Celine's confidence untouched. Mira walked out into the rain, head high, her footsteps measured. Across the street, Martinez met her with a nod. You did perfectly, the detective said. We have her. That evening, Carr's office became a war room. The recording was clear. Celine had admitted to handling the filing exactly the way it needed to be handled. Carr replayed the line twice. That phrasing is gold, he said. It implies deliberate manipulation. Ada exhaled slowly. With this and the unfiled record, we have everything. Almost, Carr said. We'll need to tie it to motive. She benefits when the prenup fails, both with Darius now, and later when she divorces him. Mira folded her arms. Then we prove her history. We expose the pattern. And they did. Carr unearthed documentation of Celine's past, different surnames, identical outcomes. 2 wealthy ex-husbands stripped bare by the same trick. When Carr presented the full case to the prosecutor's office, the response was immediate. They'd pressed charges for fraud, conspiracy, and tampering with legal documents. Celine Hart's perfect facade was about to shatter. It happened quietly the next morning. Celine arrived at Darius's downtown office, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, and found detectives waiting beside the elevator. Her expression flickered from confusion to disbelief, then to calculation. "Rebecca, or Celine Hart," Detective Martinez said. "You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." Across the hall, Darius emerged mid-call, voice fading as he took in the scene. His fiancée's wrists cuffed, her eyes cold and dry. "What is this?" he demanded. Celine didn't look at him. "You should have listened when I said some people don't deserve trust," she whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. The elevator doors closed on the man who thought he couldn't be beaten. Weeks later, the courtroom filled to capacity. Cameras flashed outside, journalists murmured inside. The case had become public, the fraudulent prenup scandal, headlines called it. Mira sat beside Carr at the plaintiff's table. Darius entered looking smaller than she remembered, shoulders slumped, arrogance diluted by fear. Celine was absent, held in custody, awaiting trial. When the judge entered, silence fell. "Case number 17 to 2421, she announced. Lawson vs. Cole. Final divorce proceedings. Carr stood, calm and surgical. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that the prenuptial agreement presented by the defendant is not legally valid due to failure of filing, and that assets were fraudulently transferred to conceal marital property." What followed was 3 hours of testimony and evidence. Bank transfers. Corporate registrations. Screenshots. Voice recordings. Then came the cafe audio. Celine's voice filled the courtroom, confident and crisp. "I made sure everything was handled exactly the way it needed to be handled." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Even the judge's expression hardened. Carr turned to Darius's lawyer. "Mr. Greaves, would you like to clarify who handled the filing?" Greaves swallowed hard. "Celine Hart assured me she'd deliver the documents to the clerk herself." The judge's tone was ice. "So you delegated the filing of a binding legal document to your client's assistant?" Greaves nodded weakly. "Then, Mr. Greaves, this court will ensure the Bar Association reviews your conduct." When she turned to Darius, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Cole, do you have anything to say for yourself?" He stood, hands trembling slightly. "Your Honor, I thought I was protecting what I built. I didn't know she'd—" "Mr. Cole," the judge interrupted. "Ignorance is not innocence. You orchestrated deceit and enabled fraud. You will answer for both." When the ruling came, it echoed like thunder. "The prenuptial agreement is hereby declared null and void. All marital assets will be equitably divided, with 60% awarded to the plaintiff, Mira Lawson, in recognition of proven financial misconduct by the defendant. Damages of $500,000 are to be paid for fraudulent transfers and legal fees." For Darius, it was the end of an empire. For Mira, the end of a nightmare. She didn't smile when the gavel fell. Justice isn't joy, it's balance restored. Outside, reporters called her name. She walked past them into daylight, the air cold but clean. Behind her, Darius stood alone on the courthouse steps, a man who had laughed at the wrong line in his own story. Weeks later, Detective Martinez called with an update. Celine took a plea deal. 15 years. Restitution to her victims. She'll be gone a long time. Mira closed her eyes, letting the news settle. What about Darius? He's filing for bankruptcy. Lost everything. Mira didn't reply immediately. There was no satisfaction, only silence, the kind that follows a storm. Months passed. Mira sold the old house and bought a penthouse overlooking the city skyline. She launched her own consulting firm, Phoenix Strategies, and started a non-profit foundation helping women who had been financially deceived by their partners. Her story became a symbol. A warning. A mirror. At her first seminar, she stood before a room full of women, her voice steady. You don't have to stay broken to prove you were wronged. Take your power back. Let knowledge be the weapon that no one can take from you. The applause wasn't loud, it was lasting. 1 year later, outside a conference hotel, Mira saw him. Darius Cole. Thinner, paler, humble in a way that used to be impossible for him. He walked up slowly. I saw your talk, he said. You're doing good work. She nodded. People learn from pain. I just decided to make mine useful. I came to say I'm sorry, he said. For everything. You didn't deserve it. Mira looked at him for a long moment. No one ever does. He hesitated, then whispered, I hope you're happy. She smiled faintly. I am. He left, swallowed by the evening crowd. And that was enough. Justice had found its way back, not in vengeance, but in restoration. Darius lost his fortune, Celine lost her freedom, and Mira found her peace. But her greatest victory wasn't the money or the verdict, it was reclaiming herself. Because the real power in this world isn't wealth. It's awareness. It's knowing that no one can write your ending without your permission. If you've stayed till now, tell us in the comments, what lesson did this story leave you with? Would you have done what Mira did, or walked away quietly? A year later, the city had changed its rhythm, and so had she. Mira Lawson no longer woke up to silence heavy with loss. The woman who once sat at a kitchen table surrounded by signed divorce papers now stood before glass walls and skyline sunrises, her life rebuilt, not recycled. And yet, even after justice and millions awarded, the echoes of what she endured still whispered. Because healing isn't instant. It's earned. If you've followed Mira's journey, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and share, what does healing mean to you after betrayal? The camera of our minds pans across her new life, a high-rise apartment with open windows and clean air. Mira stands barefoot on a marble balcony, coffee in hand, looking down at a city that once mocked her and now bows to her resilience. She'd used the settlement wisely. Not to flaunt wealth, but to reclaim independence. A new consulting firm, Phoenix Strategies, was thriving under her name. And alongside it, a foundation born from pain and purpose, Phoenix Rising, created to help women recover from financial abuse and hidden asset manipulation. In every newsletter headline, every testimonial, every workshop she led, Mira found a kind of redemption no courtroom could give her. Still, sometimes when the wind hit just right, she heard it, the ghost of Darius's laugh echoing through memory. But it no longer hurts. It reminded her how far she'd come. The grand ballroom at the downtown Marriott shimmered with gold lighting. Rows of women filled the seats, some nervous, some scarred, all searching for hope. It was the first Reclaim Your Power conference. Mira stood at the podium, wearing quiet confidence like armor. Cameras flashed. Her speech was simple, not rehearsed, just real. When I signed those divorce papers, I thought my life was over. But pain can be fuel if you refuse to let it own you. I'm not here to talk about revenge. I'm here to talk about rebuilding, brick by brick, lesson by lesson. She looked out over the crowd, lawyers, mothers, students, women who had seen their lives shrink under control and deception. You are not what was done to you, she said. You are what you choose to become after. Applause erupted, sustained, tearful, defiant. Among them, she noticed a young woman lingering near the stage. After the session, that woman approached, voice trembling. Mrs. Lawson, my husband hid everything, assets, accounts, even loans in my name. I found your story online and hired a lawyer because of it. We uncovered everything. I got my life back. Thank you. Mira smiled, eyes glistening. You did that yourself. I just lit the first match. Every story like that reminded her why she'd survived. After the conference, she met Marcus Chen outside, a cardiologist she'd met at a charity event months earlier. He still wore his hospital scrubs beneath a dark coat, a mix of fatigue and warmth in his smile. You were incredible in there, he said. I think you made half that room believe in themselves again. Half's a good start, Mira replied, smiling. They walked toward the parking lot together, casual and comfortable. Marcus had been patient, never prying, never rushing. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was never to fix her. He offered her something Darius never could, peace without conditions. Their dinners had become rituals of laughter and ease. No luxury, no performance. Just two people who'd known loss and were choosing better this time. He reached for her hand. You know, I like being part of this version of your life. She glanced at him. You mean the one where I don't apologize for taking up space? He grinned. Exactly that one. For the first time in years, her laughter came without restraint. One morning, her phone rang while she reviewed foundation budgets. Mrs. Lawson, said a familiar voice, Detective Martinez. Detective. I thought the case was long closed. It is, Martinez said. But I wanted to update you. Celine Hart took a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison. Restitution to all her victims. Mira nodded slowly, eyes on the skyline. So she's finally stopped running. Yes. But there's more, she requested to see you. She says she wants to apologize. Silence hung between them. Mira leaned against the desk. What would she possibly say? That's up to you, Martinez said gently. She's at the federal detention center downtown. You don't owe her anything, but it's your choice. Mira didn't answer right away. Forgiveness was complicated. It wasn't a gift, it was a boundary. I'll think about it, she finally said. When the call ended, she stared at the reflection in her office window. The woman looking back wasn't the betrayed wife anymore. She was something far rarer, healed, scarred, unbreakable. A week later, Lionel Carr called with another update. Darius has filed for bankruptcy, he said. Lost everything, properties, businesses, accounts. Even his car was repossessed. Mira listened in silence. He's working again, Carr continued. Sales job at a small firm. Barely making ends meet. The image formed easily, Darius in a cubicle, tie loosened, staring at spreadsheets he once paid others to read. She felt no triumph, just a quiet understanding of how poetic life could be. Sometimes the world doesn't need your revenge. It has its own way of collecting debts. Weeks later, Mira was at dinner with her sister Tessa, laughing over appetizers, when the laughter from another table caught her attention, loud, forced, familiar. Then she saw him. Darius. He was arguing with the bartender, voice slurred, credit card declined. The once flawless man now disheveled, desperate, drunk. Sir, please, the bartender said. The card isn't working. There's money in there, Darius snapped. Run it again. Mira froze, the noise around her fading to a dull hum. He turned, caught her gaze across the restaurant, and for a second, the years collapsed. Then his face fell. The arrogance drained out of him like color from a photograph. He turned and stumbled toward the door, vanishing into the night. Tessa's hand found hers. Do you want to go after him? Mira exhaled. No. I already did that once. And she didn't look back. Later that night, she stood on her balcony again, the city glittering below like a second sky. Celine was in prison. Darius was broke. And she, Mira Lawson, was free. But freedom, she'd learned, wasn't just the absence of chains. It was the calm that comes when you stop needing closure from the people who broke you. Healing, she realized, was quiet. 6 months later, at another Phoenix Rising event, Mira was greeting guests when she noticed a man standing across the street. At first, she thought it was a coincidence. But when he stepped forward, she knew. Darius. He looked better than before, sober, older, humbled. He waited for her to acknowledge him, then approached carefully. Hello, Mira, he said. She kept her tone neutral. Darius. What are you doing here? I saw the news about your conference. I needed to see it with my own eyes. He hesitated. You built something incredible. Thank you. I came to say I'm sorry, he continued. For the lies, the money, the way I treated you. I destroyed everything good I had, and I know I can't fix it. But you should know I finally see what you were trying to give me. Mira studied his face, looking for the arrogance that used to live there. It was gone. I don't hate you, she said softly. I just don't carry you anymore. He nodded, tears gathering but not falling. I deserve that. He turned to leave, then stopped. You look happy. I am, she said. For the first time, I am. As he walked away into the crowd, she didn't feel pity. Just closure. The real kind. That evening, Marcus joined her for dinner at her penthouse. The skyline shimmered through the glass as they cooked together, something simple, unpretentious, warm. I saw him today, she said. Darius? She nodded. He apologized. Marcus paused, then asked gently, how did that feel? Like the last page finally turned, she said. He smiled, reached for her hand. Then here's to new chapters. They clinked glasses, the quiet between them full of peace. Months passed. Phoenix Rising expanded, offices in 3 states, partnerships with legal aid, therapy programs, and shelters. Mira became a voice for financial justice and emotional resilience. Every speech, every woman she helped, rewrote a piece of her past. One night, as she reviewed a new intake form, she paused at a message written in the comment box. My husband's been hiding assets. I heard your story. Can you help? She smiled, typing her reply herself instead of delegating it. Yes. You're not alone. We'll help you find the truth. Mira turned off her lamp, stepped onto the balcony, and watched dawn paint the horizon gold. Justice had been served. Revenge had been replaced by purpose. And love, quiet, patient, unforced, had found her again.